Hi guys, I'm hopping on today to talk to you about listening skills, and I'm going to give you three and then one bonus listening skill. Ways to practice how to be a better listener. So I was, well, first let me just tell you that one of the folks in my group, Unlocking Employee Potential, it's an employee engagement group on Facebook, asked for this. Specifically how to be a better listener, how to be more present for others. And I think it's a really great leadership skill across the board, no matter what it is you're doing, however many people you're leading, or if you're just running a household even. I think that you really want to be able to listen and to understand when and how to listen better. So I was away this weekend for I guess 3-4 days in total. And we were up in the woods, out without any electricity or running water. And my friend, there was a lot going on, right? So we're in the middle of, there's a project happening. And I had said something and I knew that he didn't hear me. And I felt like it was an important thing. And later I made fun of him and I was like, you don't listen to me. And all the while, I knew that I was safe, right? Like I never felt like he was ignoring me, or if something was really pressing or really important, that he wouldn't take the time to stop. But the reality is he was fully engaged in something else, right? And time was of the essence, decisions had to be made, people were asking him questions, he was busy, right? So I think that that's an example of really understanding what climate you're in when we're listening, right? Like what's actually happening in the atmosphere. And yeah, I think it's really cool. One thing that I'll tell you, it's a little bit off topic, but I think that there's a parallel about self-discovery and realizing sort of how we behave in certain situations. And someone once said, and I don't know who, so if you know who, please tell me, there's all this psychology work that's done studying how people behave when they're taken out into the woods as a means to heal things like anxiety, depression, to help young adolescents have a smooth transition into adulthood. And the research shows that it costs a lot less than typical therapy or psychotherapy, and the results are more far-reaching. And what the quote was that I really loved was that if you take someone up into the woods for a week, you'll see who they really are. And I think that this to me is a falling away of all of the sort of noise and preoccupation that things like the digital reality that we're sort of stuck in the city or in the rigmarole of normal life has on us. So what happens is when you're faced with more of a survival and you're thinking more clearly, you're able to create, I feel like you create, and I've spent a good amount of time off grid, you create stronger bonds with those that you're with, and you're able to communicate what you need, and it becomes really clear channels of communication. And I think it's a really fascinating model that we can sort of lean on when we think about building teams and working under high stress environments. So yeah, so the thing with that moment where I felt as if I wasn't heard, I felt that the relationship itself has so much psychological safety, right? That I knew that it was circumstantial and it was not that I wasn't being listened to, even though I made fun later just to kind of make light and to express myself. But I have a couple of other examples that I think are similar, right? So say someone walks into your office and they say, we missed this report. We needed it to be handed into the client at 8 a.m. this morning. Do you have a half hour? Are you in the middle of anything? I really need you to help me. We need the report and I need your help. So you could feel as if in that moment that maybe you had something else going on, right? But what you do instead is you say, you ask really great questions. Did you ask them about whatever the ROI for their client delivery, if that's what you're tracking? for them? Did we get the design done, or am I just doing the content, right? So you get all the information that you need. You ask really great questions and you say, I got it. And you make sure you have it. So in a half hour, you deliver that report to your teammate, right? So conversely, if you didn't have such a strong relationship with that person that walked in your office, so it's psychological safety again, you might say after they walk up, you might not ask those questions to find out how to deliver the best product or solution in 30 minutes. They walk out and you might be upset that they interrupted you, that they asked so briskly or abruptly, and that they thwarted the trajectory of your work and what you had, the other thing, your other responsibilities, right? You might say, well, okay, sure, I'll do that, right? So that interaction lacks psychological safety. You're not in a good space with that person. And it could be something as simple as you guys have different personalities and you haven't learned how to find a way to work together yet. And it's just basically behavioral drives are off and lack of communication around that very specific awareness. So same thing happened. The person walked in, interrupted you, needed something rapid fire, needed your support. And you get to make a decision based on most likely the psychological safety in the relationship and the relationship itself. Do I trust this person? Do I have a mutual responsibility for a shared outcome, right? Which is one of the emblems of what a team actually is, right? So I don't know if emblem is the right word, but I like it. It's like a little emblem or something. It's like shining, right? It's like, do you have that? Do you have a shared outcome? And are both parties responsible, right? So when we think about listening, very specifically around some techniques that you can use. So I can't even tell you, I'm thinking like 3 or 4 times I have coached people who have told me stories that when they go in to see their manager or their boss, the CEO, the person is looking at their phone the whole time. It's so shocking to me that this type of thing still happens. And I understand how someone can be so busy or assume that they're so busy. Excuse me, I have to sip my water with oranges in it. But this is the first technique. Number 1, be gracious and be giving with your time. So when someone's in your presence, give them all of you, right? Don't be cheap with your time. And be in the future or in the past, right? So worrying about the thing that you just got out of or worrying about something that's coming up in the future. True leadership is really that presence and being able to fully devote yourself to the person that's in your charge. That's what true leadership is. So put the phone down and listen to the person that's in front of you. So I think of my virtual assistant. So I'll charge, I have like $150 family and friend rate, and then I'll charge like $275 sometimes for like work that I'll do within a company. I've charged $500 for coaching, executive coaching. I'll charge $1,000 an hour if I'm doing custom workshops within companies. So if you look at like a profit and loss or you're doing a budget, okay, my time is worth more than my virtual assistant. But if you think about it in 2 ways, one is that if I'm not fully present with my VA, Julia, and she is asking for help, but not really asking for help, I would miss it. If she didn't outright say exactly what she needed, I wouldn't have the ability to sense what she might need. I might miss the fact that she hadn't fully read the project script. And the entire project might go just 2 degrees off rail, costing the company thousands and thousands of dollars. So the first point is that your lack of presence is more expensive than whatever you charge. And the outcome will always dictate that. It will always end up like that. The mistakes that we make were because we were lacking presence or perception. The other point is the relationship suffers. So it's a little ding against the relationship every time someone doesn't listen to you. And we know, we are 100% certain when someone's listening to us or not. We're so smart. You can pick it out. I might be wrong on that, actually. I'm 100% sure when someone's listening to me. I'm curious if you are. I believe that you are, because people know. So one of my girlfriends yesterday, we had a chat. I'm putting in client notes while I'm talking to her because I had so much to do. And it was really hard to like completely pay attention to what she's saying and be typing these words over here. And I know she knew I was doing something like this, right? My hair's so fuzzy. It is crazy humid in Boston today. And same thing on the telephone. If you don't even see the person, you don't even have that visual information, and you know the person is not listening, right? Sometimes it's like, yeah, I just needed a second because I didn't know which exit to get off, and yes, I wasn't listening for 2 seconds. Can you repeat that, or whatever, right? But we know. We know. So if you perpetually do that to people, do you think they feel respected? No, you can't expect to create strong sort of connective tissue between two people on a team if you're not listening well. So rule number one, or technique number one, is to be gracious and generous in the moment with your time. And don't put yourself above somebody else. I think it's really important to realize that every time you do that, you put yourself at a disadvantage. It's a power mechanism, and what happens is the assumption is that you will miss something because you see yourself at the top. There's no way you can actually see everything from that point. And I probably should explain that more scientifically, and I can, and I know I've talked about it in the past, but that's that's how it works. So okay, so that's number one. Yeah. So number two, that's not the one I wanted to say for number two. Layer. Oh yeah, no agenda. I love this. Okay, so this is very good. So oftentimes what we're doing is entering a conversation with a little bit of an agenda. So I want Joan to really hear what I got to say. I want Joan to take a different action after this conversation. I want Joan to tell me why she's doing this blah, blah, blah way, right? That's an agenda. So we're going in seeking an outcome. Now, that's okay to do. Don't get me wrong. And if you're in negotiation, I would actually suggest vocalizing that, coming to an agreement before you even break down the outcome, right? So, or get into creating an outcome. So perhaps saying something quite broad, quite big and bold, such as, my goal for this interaction, this conversation, and I do this on a lot of business calls. My goal would be that both of us walk away with more information about one another and some win or whatever. Like I'll just claim it. If there's a negotiation and there's a challenge or an issue, then I would seek agreement. I would say, my goal for this conversation is to walk away knowing that we both feel good about what we've both agreed on a certain outcome. Can we do that together here today? And it's much more, or maybe it's less transactional than saying, I want you to know that I'm right, or I want you to believe in my idea. Because that kind of stuff is a little bit like you're pulling two people pulling a rope. You want that other person to be on your side, and then so you just put each other in a deadlock. Versus, I want the outcome to be we both win. Something like this, right? Is that what you want? And then you can move backwards and peel it back and say, okay, so let's just remember that was the outcome if things start to get tenuous. So the way I think about this is walking in without an agenda. When we have an agenda, that's what causes us to create a narrative while the other person's speaking. So if someone starts talking and you're already thinking, okay, well, that must mean this. So I'm going to say to her that, or I'm going to say to him that I'm going to need this done like this, right? And you're instantly creating a narrative in your head to get them to behave in a way, or to move them down the narrative that you're after, that agenda. So what happens is you've thwarted your ability to truly give them that grace, right? So what we want to do is stay empty inside with no agenda. And if you really want to amp up your leadership, your agenda is to be a servant to them. How can I help this person in the most way possible, right? And sometimes that means telling a story, telling a personal story, bringing yourself down to their level, bringing yourself up to their level. Maybe it's not saying anything at all. Maybe it's finding out what they need because you've never truly found out. So you're there to serve them, right? So in the last one, we think about active listening. What I love about active listening is that it's about asking questions, which is interesting because you're speaking, and that's within listening, right? But so there's ways we ask questions that can be empowering and can provoke thought and discovery, and then there's questions that can sort of make you feel kind of bummed out, right? So this is like coaching theory, and one of the gentlemen from Boston Businesswoman, he said, I love questions like this. What brings chills down your spine? So it gets the person to really share something that is super personal and really exciting to answer, right? It's a discovery in and of itself. So I think about it like, so rather than ask, why do you keep doing it like that? Which there's so much, packed in that. It's fully loaded. It's obviously negative. And then the person has to think backwards to, why is something wrong with me? Why am I doing this wrong? Versus challenging them into the future, saying something like, how else could this be done? How else could you do this? Or if your son was experiencing something like this, what would you tell him? So it's really helping them see outside of their own behavior and see into the future and put them in a more generous space rather than approaching it from sort of a heavy past and degrading. So asking the right questions, and questions that allow people to really think for themselves, and then listen, right? So then you apply grace, number one, and then you apply the second one, not having an agenda, no agenda. So, and then the third is ask great questions, right? So those are my tips for you today. I want to welcome you into my Facebook group, Unlocking Employee Potential, and just apply to jump in. I'll bring you right in. And definitely when you do that, tell me what it is you're working on, because that's how I'm building these pieces of content. And also, if anyone is interested, I am launching my coaching program, which is a leadership program, conscious leadership, unlocking your leadership potential. So excited for this. And I'm only taking limited people for this. So I'm going to start with just 5, and I'm super excited. It's definitely transformative work. It's going to take you inside of your communication, how you formed the way that you behave as a leader, and really be able to recalibrate and come out a little bit stronger than you are already. I know most of the people that are in my network are already pretty high performers and doing great work for others, but there's always room to grow. So I'm so excited to be working with you all and sharing this juicy, yummy stuff. And I will talk to you soon. And definitely like and subscribe to my channel. And if you found this helpful, then definitely share it with a few of your friends.